Hello there, this is Cheryl Lampard and this is Knit Matters. It's season 3, episode 7. The first thing I need to check is whether you can hear me. I'm just going to see if I get any answers by refreshing the page on my phone. Not seeing anything at the moment. I'm going to carry on until somebody tells me you can or can't hear me. I do have my cameraman back today, hooray! So hopefully it'll pop up if you can hear us or not. So thank you so much for joining me, whether you're watching us live or the replay later. I really do appreciate you joining me. I'm Cheryl Lampard. I'm an image consultant with my company Style Matters International, and throughout my life my passions have been sewing and knitting. And knitting is the thing I do every day. It's my therapy and I love to do it. I also used to be the proud owner of a yarn store in Brighton, England, and one of the great joys of owning a yarn store is that you get to be able to teach people how to knit. I love doing it then, I love doing it now, perhaps more so now because I can reach more people through the medium of Facebook and other social media platforms. I'm also a Craft Yarn Council certified knitting instructor, and I love knitting, as you do, I hope. So first off, I just want to say the winner of our little competition that we had to name my little sheep, we've called him Cutlet, and the winner is Mariah Dutton. Congratulations to her, and she's won a 2-hour knitting class with me to learn anything she wants to learn. So today we're going to be mad about plaid, but we're not going to be mad about knitting it in terms of being mad because it's hard to do. It's not hard to do, and I'm going to show you some very simple, easy ways to sort of create some plaid patterns with your knitting. So I'm going to, without the need for hundreds of spools of yarn or strands of yarn all the way across your knitting, I'm going to ask the cameraman to go to the worktop and then we'll get going. So as we go along, I will try and say hello if you pop up. Forgive me if I miss you. Sometimes things disappear off the screen before I can catch them. Do we know if people can hear us? Anything? Okay, we're going to carry on assuming that you can hear. So first off, what's the difference between a plaid and a tartan? Well, in technical terms, a plaid is a crisscross of patterns of 2 or more colours. A tartan is a plaid with a name to identify a community or a clan, and checks are plaids with a regular pattern, which are usually 2 colours. But whatever you choose to call them, the identifier is a pattern composed of intersecting vertical and horizontal lines. So we'll call it a plaid as far as this episode goes. So the first thing I want to show you is this one. This is a slip stitch check pattern. It's in stockinette stitch, and the pattern is set with every 5th stitch being a slipped stitch, and it's wrapped twice around the needle. There's 4 rows of the main colour, then 2 striped rows. I'm going to demo how to do this because I think it's very simple and it's very effective. So Karen has joined us, and Linda, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. So let me show you how to do this very basic sort of check pattern, plaid pattern, whatever you wish to call it. So I've got my green and I'm going into the stripes now. Let me just get sorted with my yarn, sorry. Working in a tight space here, and I don't want to trip up my cameraman. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do on this one, I'm just going to show you how to do this elongated stitch. So whenever we get to this, and I'm doing an edge stitch, then I'm doing 4 stitches, then my edge stitch. So all I'm going to do is wrap my yarn round twice. I'm not going to make it super tight or super loose, just my normal tension. Then I'm going to carry on until the next one, which is 4 stitches away, and the 5th one I will do the same thing, and I will wrap. This is the pattern row for it. Wrap it twice, carry on. 4 stitches, and then my 5th one, you could do it obviously as many as you want. Wrap twice, just my normal tension, and carry on. Now, when we turn, this is going to be a pole row. I'm tangled up here. Okay, I'm going to go straight in with my purl. So I would purl as normal. Now when I get to my wrapped stitch, all I do there, I slip it purlwise. We're always going to slip purlwise. And that's a general rule for any pattern, unless it says otherwise. If it says slip a stitch, you always do it purlwise, unless it tells you to do otherwise. So I'm slipping that purlwise and I'm letting that double wrap drop. Then I'm going to carry on. Now you'll notice that my yarn is in the front, or it's actually at the back of the knitting, but it's towards me, is what I mean. Oh, I nearly knitted that. So I'm up to my wrapped stitch. I'm going to slip that purlwise, let that drop. Okay, carry on to the next one. Same thing. Off the needle, let it drop. And my yarn for this stockinette version is staying the side that's nearest me, on the wrong side. So now I'm going back to my green, and let me show you what to do here. Again, I'm knitting stockinette stitch, and when I get to my slip stitch, I slip it purlwise, and the yarn now is away from me in the same way as it would be if I was just doing ordinary stockinette. I'm not doing anything different with the yarn. Oh, Dawn Gravesnear, hi, thank you for joining us. It's always good to see you, Dawn. You're such a loyal Knit and Matters viewer, and I appreciate that. So I'm slipping it purlwise, and I'm carrying on knitting. I've got a bit of fluff there. Okay. I'm slipping it purlwise, and I'm carrying on knitting. I'm just going to purl back the other row, and then I'll show you another option. It's very simple, but it's very effective. What you mustn't do is, what you have to remember to do is not to knit or purl that slip stitch. It gets easier when you change colour, because it's the one colour that's not the same as your main colour. David Aitchison is watching. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So I'm slipping that purlwise, and I'm continuing with my purl stitches. Slipping it purlwise, continuing on my wrong side row. Slipping it purlwise. I want to, oh, you can hear the train in the distance there. It's very hot here tonight, so the windows are open. Okay, so there you see what's happening there. And of course, with a bit of steaming or blocking, that will really make a nice checkerboard pattern. It's very simple, but very effective. Now, there's another option that you can do here. Same principle, but all I did here was I actually widened it a bit. So instead of having 4 stitches between my 2 drop stitches, I have 5. So my 6th one is this stitch. And instead of doing 2 stockinette rows, I did a purl row on this side. If you're doing that, you need to make sure where your yarn is. So if you're going from purl to knit, you want to make sure that your yarn is either forward or backward, so it's not going to cross over this stitch. So for example, if I was to go into purl, and I'll just do this in the gold colour so it makes the difference. If I was to do this in this colour, I've got to take my yarn to the back and slip it that way and carry on then. Or a better idea, if you don't like the change of yarn there, you could actually do a knit row on this side, and on the wrong side row you could do another knit row, so that the transition between your colours is better. But if you do this with a reverse stocking stitch, line here, you've just got to remember where your yarn is. You've just got to move it backwards or forwards so you don't interfere with your slip stitch. Okay, so that's a very simple but effective way of doing a sort of check pattern. Very simple, very easy, and no strands of yarn hanging at the back, because that's always the dread with, you know, complex plaid patterns. You've got a lot going on with them. Let me show you something else now. So this is duplicate stitch. We've done duplicate stitch before, I know, and we've done it for decorative purposes, but I want to show you this. This is stitched. We're actually sewing this, and this is another form to do it. You'll see here that where I've done my duplicate stitch, I've done it every other horizontal row, every other row. Here I've done it every row, and I'm going to show you how to do both. So I've got a needle threaded here, and I'm going to show you on this one first. I'm going to show you on the same thing, and then I'm going to go up. So let's start somewhere. Doesn't really matter where I start. Let's go 1, 2. Nancy Rogness, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is watching. Thank you for joining us, Nancy. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm going to go here. Let's say I'm going to start down here. So I've already got my navy here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to do it as a solid line first. So duplicate stitch is exactly that. You're duplicating the path of the stitch. I've shown you how to do it before when we've sort of patched something up or when we've disguised something, and it's a useful thing to know if you've got a glitch in your knitting or even as a quick repair. When I had my yarn store, I remember fixing a sweater that somebody had that they'd managed to burn a hole in it, so I was able to duplicate stitch over the hole, and it was perfect. So I followed the yarn, the path of the stitch below. Now because I'm going to do every row, I come straight up, I go back into the hole that I've just come out of, then I come straight up, so you can see there's that bar going across of the stitch underneath. So I'm going to go straight into that. Okay, you can always kind of fatten up your stitch to cover the stitch if you want to afterwards, but you don't want to be pulling this too tight. So I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to go, you can see there the 2 legs of the stitch, and you'll be able to see that a bit easier when I get to the lighter colour. Following the path of the stitch, then I'm going back from whence I came and up then to the next. In fact, I'm going to miss 2 because I've got 2 bands of blue and I don't need to go over those. They're already my dark colour. So I've skipped 2 rows. I've come up there, and the stitch is going like this. So I sort of go into the stitch above to cover the stitch below, if that makes sense. Then I'm going to go, there you are, you can see that blue line there. Susan Irving is watching. Hi Susan, thank you for joining us. So I'm going to just do a couple more, and then I shall go every other stitch. Again, you can see that blue bar from what I've done below. So you keep going upwards. And you're really just following the path of the stitch. So if you need to sort of tweak that afterwards, you can. So now I'm going to miss this one and go into the one above, and it seems like a big leap, but it's actually not. I'm just missing 1 row. And I did that wrong. I need to go under here. Sorry. That's it. Easy enough to correct because you can see where you've gone. In this one, I'm going to go back into where I want to go. Now I want to go up into this one. So I'm going above where my thread went. And it's easy enough. If you get it wrong, just unthread your needle or work it backwards. Simple, 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 but very, very effective. So if I was going to do the next row, if I was going to do one after the other, I'd pick this bar. Because I'm going into the row above, I need to go there. And Laura is watching too. This is wonderful. Hi, Laura. So you can see the difference by going in every stitch or every other one. That's all there is to it. Okay. And it's very effective, as you can see. I love the way that looks. I think it's really, I've got two different versions here, but it's the same thing. But I think it looks very sharp, especially on the, with high contrast colors. So that's all you do if you're doing it as a way of embroidery. Now, let me just explain, before I go on to the next one, which is very similar, let me just explain how else you can use it. So this is much more of a sort of tartan sample, I would say. This is, what I've done here is this, my blocks, then it's one stitch grey, one stitch aqua, one stitch grey, then it's however many stitches across to here, and same thing again, one after the other. And then I've got this white row going up vertically. Deborah's watching and Pamela's watching. Thank you for joining me. Now, I could do this sort of with intarsia. I could have, instead of doing my duplicate stitch, I could actually do this with intarsia. But if I've got this across the width of a sweater, that's an awful lot of single stitches of a strand of yarn that I've got to have, and I've got to twist it each time. I really don't want to do that. Not for just a single row, but that single row is important. So I would rather just do my knitting and then do this afterwards. If you really prefer to do intarsia, by all means do that. But for me, I would rather do this afterwards. And all I'm doing there, when I get my intersection of the cream or the white colours going across here, I'm just going to go straight up and fill them in. On a small sample like this, it really wouldn't have mattered to have done intarsia, but why make life difficult for myself? I don't need lots of strands of yarn hanging from my knitting. So I would rather do it with, as you can see here, just what I've shown you. So there's all sorts of ways that you can use it. Do it. Now, there's another way that you can do the duplicate stitch. If you don't like sewing, if you don't like embroidery, as it were, you can do it with a crochet hook. Now, I do like doing this with a crochet hook. You get the same effect, but for reasons that will become obvious in a minute, it's actually kind of can work out better. Now, one tip I would suggest is if you know ahead of time that you're going to do duplicate stitch after you've knitted your piece, then where you are going to do your duplicate stitch, for example here, you could make that a purl line of stitches. So if I knew for sure that if I planned out my design and I was going to have, a block of line here and line there, I could actually have made these a purl row, a purl stitch all the way up. The reason being is that your duplicate stitch will sort of sink into the pattern. So let me just show you on this where I'm going to go into the rib. So let's pretend that this is all knit, knit, knit. Then I've placed my purl row, my purl line, my purl stitch here. So I'm going to, let me just get my fingers sorted with my yarn. So I get my crochet hook and I go under my first stitch, the bar of my first stitch. First one's always a bit tricky. I'm just going to knot that. I hate knots in knitting, but I'm going to knot it because I don't want it slipping out while I'm demonstrating. Okay, just an easy slip knot there. So I've got this around my fingers and I'm going to go into the next I'm going to push my crochet hook through. This will come a bit more obvious in a minute. You'll be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to hook it round the back, pull it through, and I'm just going to slip it through. So it's a slip stitch all the way up, really. So as I go up, you'll be able to see how this sinks into my ridge that I've created. So I'm going to go under this purl stitch. I'm going to go under there. Actually, I'm going to go up the next one. And I'm going to hook that round. It's a bit fiddly to start off with because you have to keep looking and then you get sort of a motion. Right, next one. And I'm trying to do it at an angle so that you can see what I'm doing. Pull that through. Oh, please don't separate. Sorry, my stitches. There we go. But you'll see what I mean in a minute, how that's sinking in. So if you had created a line of purl stitches, you're creating a sort of a ditch. Okay, so that, once it's sort of neatened out, I've done something funny there, but never mind. Okay, but you can see how that just sinks into, I've done something funny there, but ignore that. But you see how that just sinks in. It doesn't sit above the stitch, which when I get up here, I'm going to show you the same thing with knit stitches. And again, you can just do this with knit stitches, but it's going to be sitting atop. I've pull the tail through there. Oh, hang on, let me get rid of that. Cameras. Would be, wouldn't it? There we go. I've pulled it in through, which I didn't mean to do. Let me show you. Let me just find my bearings where right. So I'm going up here. I'm in the knit stitches now. I'm pulling it through. I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing exactly the same thing. And I'm getting the same effect as if I'd embroidered it. Just got to see where I'm going here. I'm looking around the camera so that you can see. So you see it does sit a little bit more on the top. And that's fine. So if you do know that you're going to be doing a line of duplicate stitch and you want to do it with a crochet hook, then you can do your purl stitch as you go. If not, you can absolutely do it afterwards. It sinks in a little bit more when it's in the purl ridge, but really, you know, that's pretty good. It doesn't matter at all. Sima Rosina is watching. Welcome. So now, of course, I can also still do other things. I can jump a couple of stitches up if I want to and create some texture. Or let's say I was doing this as a feature and wanted to do it with a novelty yarn or a metallic yarn. I can jump to the next one. I can miss a row to make more of my duplicate stitch. What you won't get is the effect of this, where you're missing a row. You can only really do it, your thread, you can't really miss the row in the same way that you did it here. So if you want this effect where you're going up every other row, then you would have to do it embroidery wise. You'd have to do it with a sewing needle. Otherwise, you can use your crochet hook. But again, you can really leap up and create a long stitch if you want. I'm going to miss two here just to show you what we could do. So if I had a novelty yarn, a sort of boucle yarn, I could really sort of leap ahead with this. So I'm going to miss two and go into the third. If I really wanted to have a different texture, a different stitch, 1, 2, I'm going to go into the third, and so on. You see? It's really very nice. And actually, in some ways, I think it's flatter than the stitch version. This is the stitch version, where I did it every row, and it's laying on top of the stitch. So it's great. It's just a little bit thicker. You can just see that if I turn that way, you can sort of see how it sits a little bit above. And it is a little bit thicker because you want it to cover the stitch. With the crochet version, it's a little flatter. It's a little flatter because you're not going round the stitch in the same way. The other good thing about the crochet version is if you make a mistake, it's a lot easier to unravel. All you do is that. Whereas if I've got to unravel this one, I've really got to pick it out with a needle, but that one will come away very easily. Okay, except that's caught on a bit of yarn there, but that will pull out. Yeah, I've split the yarn there, so it's got stuck, but you could see exactly what I was doing there. Oh, what did I do there? Made a mess. Never mind. Okay, so that's the difference really, but very, very easy ways of creating checks, plaids. Do have some fun with those ideas. I hope you found them useful. Play about with different versions. Have fun with them. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that and I hope it was useful. If you have any questions about this episode or any others, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below, or you can just email me, cheryl@knittermatters.com. I'm always happy to answer your questions. This was season 3, episode 7, and it'll be uploaded onto the page and to our YouTube channel within 24 hours. And the easiest way actually to see previous episodes is on YouTube. And if you subscribe to the Knitter Matters YouTube channel, they'll come automatically into your feed when new episodes are published. There's probably now something like 80 plus episodes of Knitter Matters on YouTube. So if you want to know what each contains, then I do have playlists that I typed out, which gives the content of each one. If you want one of those, just let me know. Again, just message me or email me. If you do message me, you need to put your email in there, otherwise I won't be able to send it to you. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed our Mad About Plaid episode, and in the meantime, until our next episode, thank you for joining me. Stay well, stay calm, and stay knitting. Bye for now.